Hello and welcome to What Are the Odds? In today's video, we will discuss the likelihood that the events are to be repeated in I Am Legend. The film opens on a news broadcast. Dr. Alice Crippen has discovered a viral cure for cancer. They genetically engineered the measles virus to be helpful rather than harmful. They've had 10,009 clinical trials in humans, and all 10,009 are cancer-free. This medical breakthrough and the following 3-year gap will serve as the film's inciting incident. 3 years later, New York City is empty aside from one man and his dog. He races through the streets in a red car. The man is out hunting deer. A lion steals his prey when the alarm on his watch sounds. The man goes home, cooks for himself and his dog Sam, watches an old news broadcast, and bathes Sam. After locking everything up, the man and Sam sleep in the bathtub. Flashing back to the past, the man, Robert, picks up his family. He's a colonel in the army. In 30 minutes, the island will be sealed. A military quarantine has been issued. Back in the present, Robert wakes in bed. He works out. Afterwards, he heads into the basement, one in which he has turned into a lab. Robert is conducting animal trials using the virus. G-series results have been typical, that is, each compound in the G-series has either not killed the virus or has killed the host. Compound 6, however, is showing decreased aggression response, partial pigmentation return, slight pupil constriction. G-series serum 391 compound 6 will be the next candidate for human trials. After arming up with a tennis ball and his rifle, Robert leaves the house with Sam. He visits a DVD store and chit-chats with the mannequins in and around the store. He returns a DVD and picks up a new one. He's midway through the G's, an aspect similar to his cure development. On a map, he crosses out a location and breaks into a house and rummages for supplies. Robert broadcasts a message on all AM frequencies. He will be at the South Street Seaport every day at midday. In the middle of his golf swinging practice, Sam senses something. Robert and Sam chase after a deer. In their pursuit, Sam runs into a dark corridor. Robert carefully goes after him. After slowly sweeping the place, he discovers a pool of blood that leads up a staircase. The deer has been killed. Past the deer, Robert discovers a cluster of mutants huddled together. Robert finds Sam under a desk. Sam is whimpering and slowly backing away. A mutant is feasting on the deer and is alerted to Robert's presence. Robert opens fire and runs away. Just as 3 more descend upon Robert, he falls out a window. Once in the sunlight, the mutants go berserk and die. Robert sets a trap just outside the same building. He draws his blood and leaves Sam in a car. He smashes the vial of blood on the ground just beyond the entrance to the building. The trap successfully ensnares a mutant. In response, another mutant angrily shouts, briefly exposing himself to the sunlight. Back in the lab, Robert examines the mutant subject, who's female, likely 18 to 20 years of age. Dilated push only sedates effectively at 6 times the human dose. Core temperature at 106 Fahrenheit, 200 beats per minute pulse, with an elevated respiration, PaO2 300% of normal, fully dilated pupils, unreactive to light, extreme reaction to UV exposure. Symptoms and tissue samples confirm subject is infected with KV, aka the Crippen virus. Robert injects the patient with GA series serum 391 compound 6. Her pulse drops to 190, core temperature to 105, 104, and decreasing. The mutant goes into a screaming fit of rage and flatlines. She recovers and returns to her mutant standard. Robert declares the compound a failure. Back in the past, Robert's family runs into a street closure. They guide the colonel to an evacuation site. When they check their eyes for signs of infection, Robert's wife is flagged as infected. Robert gets them to scan her again, a success. His family departs on a helicopter. Sam is thrust upon Robert just before they leave. Robert wakes in bed. During breakfast, he checks a book for the time of sunset and sets his watch accordingly. When driving, Robert finds Fred, one of his mannequins, has strangely wandered out into the middle of the road. Robert shoots him down and fires into the surrounding buildings. When he walks up to Fred, a car tips over the bridge and Robert is strung up by his feet. He loses consciousness from a hit to his head and comes to when his alarm goes off. Sam is barking beneath him. He cuts himself free. When he falls, his knife gets embedded into his thigh. Robert crawls to his car as the sunlight slowly diminishes. The leader mutant appears and unleashes 3 infected dogs. The dogs are ferociously waiting behind the last line of sunlight. Robert makes it to his car just as the dogs charge in. One of the dogs wounds and infects Sam. Robert goes home and injects Sam. He comforts him until he turns. Robert buries Sam. He then drives to the seaport and lays a trap. He rams into several mutants and is about to be killed moments before he is saved by a woman. She takes them back to his house. As his family ascends, they get knocked into by a rogue helicopter. Robert wakes on his couch. He finds the woman and a boy in his kitchen, Anna and Ethan. The woman explains that they heard Robert's message and waited by the pier all day. They came from Maryland and are headed for Vermont, where there's a survivors' colony in Bethel. Robert and Anna argue about the validity of a survivors' colony. In the lab, Robert is attempting to lower the mutant's body temperature to increase the compound's effectiveness. Later, they put Ethan in bed and talk. In another disagreement, Robert refutes Anna's positivity with facts. There were 6 billion people when the infection hit. KV had a 90% kill rate, or in other words, 5.4 billion people died. Less than 1% immunity for a total of 12 million survivors. The other 588 million turned into the Dark Seekers. When they got hungry, they killed and fed on everybody who remained. It turns out the Dark Seekers followed Anna home, and they storm the place. Robert sets off an explosion to buy some time. He then goes upstairs to find Anna and gets jumped. He fights the mutant off. Robert, Anna, and Ethan fall back to the lab, where more Darkseekers show up. They find that Robert's serum is working on the female mutant after all. The Darkseekers arrive in full and Robert pleads for them to stop. When the leader of the group shows up, the mutant goes into a fit of rage and repeatedly slams into the plexiglass. Robert gets Anna and Ethan to take the cure and hide away. He pulls out a grenade and blows himself up along with all the other mutants. Later, Anna and Ethan make it to the survivors' colony with the cure in hand. This film's final event is that Robert Neville's cure makes its way to the survivors' colony. Factors include cure development, broadcast, female Darkseeker, Anna, and protecting the cure. As for the reasons, we can consider the G-series breakthrough as part of the initial conditions, as those serums were already being tested at the time the movie begins following the 3-year gap. The broadcast only matters for the sake of Anna saving Robert. The female subject is necessary to test the G-serum in time for Anna's arrival. The trapping scene also establishes multiple insights into mutant intelligence, including adaptability to surroundings, intelligence to set an ambush, the capacity for emotion, and a clear hierarchy, as this event in dual purpose enrages the mutant leader. Anna's arrival can't be too late, otherwise Robert would have died, but also couldn't be too early as the cure wouldn't be ready. Finally, Robert's sacrifice for the cure is needed so that Anna and Ethan can arrive safely to the colony, cure in hand. It's time to calculate the odds that the cure makes it to the colony. First, the broadcast. Since the only thing that matters is that Anna heard the broadcast, that means it only has to play during the time she heard it, at an initial condition. For the female Darkseeker, or any mutant for that matter, it needed to have been caught to test the G-serum. However, Neville's approach seemed more opportunistic than anything. He wasn't actively searching through mutant hideouts at the time. he only ended up in one because of Sam. Therefore, we merely have to determine the odds that he managed to capture a Darkseeker on that particular day to run his tests. This will determine to be how likely it is that the deer that Sam chased ended up in the hideout, how likely Sam was to continue the pursuit, and how likely Robert was to survive his encounter with the mutants. For each, we'll give a 1 out of 2. Since Robert is immune, all he had to do was make it out. Therefore, I'll determine his survival to be whether or not he makes it out of the window. The other possibility being he gets knocked out, or worse, for a total of 1 over 8. The timing of Anna's arrival coincides heavily with the timing of when she heard the broadcast. However, if Anna hadn't been waiting by the seaport, or if Robert chose anywhere else to make his last stand, things would have turned out differently. Of course, if he hadn't chosen to do this at all, chances are Robert and Anna would have met the next day. For this, I'll assign a 1 over 2 for Anna. For Robert, he could have taken the fight anywhere in the city. If we consider the city to be 778.2 kilometers squared and the seaport to be 0.014 kilometers squared, the odds are 0.014 over 778.2 or 7 over 389,100 for the sacrifice. Along with already established factors, Robert's sacrifice is only possible if the trio survive the assault and make it to the lab. Therefore, a 1 over 2 for each person for a 1 in 8 total. Multiplying the odds, we get 1 over 8 times 7 over 389,100 times another 1 over 8 for a total of 7 over 24,902,400. Well, now we know, if you were to travel to a random split with the exact same necessary initial conditions, the likelihood that you'd see these same events transpire and the successful outcome of the final event is 0.0000028%.